There's something quietly moving through our solar system tonight. Not an asteroid, not a comet. Something older, quieter, and more deliberate. Astronomers call it 3I Atlas, an interstellar object that has wandered across unimaginable distances to reach our little corner of space. But the newest photos, soft streaks of light caught by the most sensitive eyes humanity has ever built, reveal patterns that don't behave like ordinary rocks. Its reflection shifts color in ways no dust should. Its spin seems almost too precise, and deep space antennas have begun to pick up faint pulses, repeating like a heartbeat in the dark. Some say it's just ice, others whisper that it might be something else entirely. A fragment of a civilization we'll never meet, or a messenger from a time before stars had names. Tonight, as you lie back and listen, let's drift through this mystery together. Let's follow the quiet path of Atlas and the strange questions its silence leaves behind. This is the sleepy atom, and if you love cosmic wonders whispered softly through the night, don't forget to subscribe. It arrived without warning, a thin streak of light cutting across the stillness of interplanetary space. No fanfare, no bright comet tail at first, just a small anomaly slipping through data streams from a telescope in Hawaii. At first, scientists thought it was a glitch, a wandering speck. But when the trajectory was calculated, something unsettling appeared. This object wasn't looping around our sun, it was passing straight through, from somewhere else entirely. And that word, interstellar, made even seasoned astronomers pause. Because very few things visit from outside, for weeks telescopes all over Earth turned their gaze toward it. The object's movement didn't follow the familiar curves of gravity, it zigged ever so slightly, as though it was adjusting itself. Was it natural drift? Or intention? The idea of intention in a rock feels absurd, yet data didn't lie. 3I Atlas seemed aware of forces around it, like a bird catching invisible winds. Late nights turned into quiet arguments in observatories. Some whispered that we were seeing something that couldn't exist, a fragment of alien engineering worn down by centuries of travel. Others said it was just a cosmic coincidence, nature being strange again. Still, the feeling of being watched by something ancient began to settle in the rooms where telescopes hummed. Space has seen visitors before, comets, asteroids, even pieces of other systems. But 3I Atlas behaved like a guest who knew where to go, like it had a route marked long before we ever noticed. That sense of direction, that quiet confidence in its motion, puzzled everyone who studied it. And as the first blurry photographs began to emerge, one thing was clear. Whatever it was, it didn't belong to us. It wasn't born from our sun's dust. It came from the black between the stars, and perhaps from the hands of something that once watched the same skies we do now. When it crossed the frozen edge of our solar system, there was no explosion of light, only a subtle ripple in our instruments. It entered through the Oort cloud, that icy frontier where comets sleep. Most wanderers there obey the sun's gravity immediately, but not this one. 3I Atlas hesitated, its velocity flattening like a swimmer testing new waters. For scientists, that hesitation was strange enough to sound intelligent. As weeks passed, its path bent slightly toward Mercury's orbit. The angle of descent was perfect. Too perfect, some said. If it were a random fragment, the odds of such a stable curve were nearly zero. And yet there it was, gliding calmly, leaving a faint, ionized shimmer behind, as though exhaling energy we didn't understand. Astrophysicists modeled its motion, simulations broke, equations bent, the numbers suggested micro-adjustments. tiny course corrections, the kind of behavior you'd expect from a craft maintaining trajectory, not from a frozen rock. It's just outgassing, skeptics claimed, but the gas jets were inconsistent with its speed. Even those who laughed nervously at the alien theory began saving copies of every frame, just in case. When it reached the orbit of Mars, the sun's light kissed its surface for the first time in perhaps millions of years. Cameras caught an iridescent gleam that flickered like liquid metal. That glow spread for seconds before fading, leaving behind a question that no press release dared to ask. Did something inside it wake up under the warmth of our star? The solar winds swept around it like silk. It neither resisted nor yielded, simply moved through it. That's when scientists stopped calling it a comet-like object. They began calling it the Visitor, a name that carried both awe and a whisper of unease. The discovery wasn't supposed to happen that night. The operator of the Pan-STARRS Observatory had nearly called it off due to cloudy skies. But when the telescope finally locked onto coordinates near the constellation Lyra, something flickered across the frame, then vanished. He adjusted the focus, blinked, and it appeared again. The telescope had blinked twice, as though the universe itself was hesitating to show him something. It wasn't bright, it wasn't spectacular, but its motion across the stars was impossibly straight, smooth, deliberate. No tumbling, no spin. That steadiness made the observer lean forward. Because everything in space spins, wobbles, drifts. But this object glided like it was being guided. And when he overlaid the next sequence, his heart skipped. The object had changed brightness slightly, almost like it responded to being watched. He sent the images to the network. Within hours, screens across NASA, the ESA, and independent observatories lit up. The first thing they noticed wasn't its speed, it was the pattern. A rhythm of light pulses that repeated every few frames, not perfectly, but close enough to feel intentional. Weeks later, analysis revealed a bizarre detail. The intervals matched no known rotational period. Instead, they mirrored frequencies used in deep space communication arrays. Accidental or not, no one could say. Scientists avoided the word signal. But late at night, in emails between astronomers, that word began appearing anyway. The telescope that blinked twice became a legend. Not because it found something glowing, but because it might have found something listening. Something that blinked back. Comets leave tails of gas and dust. Soft streaks that fade as sunlight burns through their ices. But the trail behind 3i Atlas didn't fade. It shimmered. Instruments recorded it glowing faintly for days after the object passed, almost as if the trail was recharging itself. The particles within it weren't behaving like ordinary dust. They aligned magnetically as though forming a pattern. A wave traveling through invisible fields. When analysts ran spectroscopy tests, they found something that defied explanation. Traces of exotic elements that shouldn't survive in deep space. Materials that could only exist under engineered conditions. Titanium isotopes, microlattices of carbon that looked like woven fibers. It was as if the object was shedding manufactured skin. That discovery made headlines for a few hours until agencies quietly stopped commenting. The official story became simpler. Unusual comet behavior. But scientists who had seen the early data kept wondering, was it really shedding material, or was it releasing something, information perhaps, into the solar wind? If dust could carry code, what might it say? Those questions lingered in quiet labs where the hum of equipment felt almost alive. In every glowing line of data they could sense something watching from beyond, leaving behind a message written in light. And maybe, just maybe, we had already stepped into its story. The first clear photograph of 3i Atlas came on a calm night from Chile's Atacama Desert. A long exposure, 30 minutes under a sky so still you could hear your own pulse. When the image appeared, it didn't look like a comet at all. Its body wasn't round or jagged. It was smooth, with edges that reflected light evenly like polished metal. The tail wasn't scattered either. It curved neatly, as though shaped by design. The scientists who saw it didn't cheer. They stared, because space debris doesn't come with symmetry that perfect. Someone whispered, "That can't be right," and they checked the camera 3 times. But it was right. The more they zoomed, the stranger it became. Geometric panels of reflection, faint, grid-like impressions beneath the surface glow. The photo was classified temporarily for data verification. Weeks passed, then quietly it reappeared online. Compressed, filtered, cropped. The raw version never surfaced again. The internet called it conspiracy, scientists called it protocol, but in private discussions the silence spoke louder than denials. Something about that image unsettled even the calmest voices. What did they see that night that made them stop talking? No one outside those labs knows, but perhaps the reason wasn't fear of what it was, but fear of what it meant. Because sometimes silence is the sound of humanity realizing it isn't alone. When scientists plotted its trajectory, something didn't add up. Every natural body follows gravity's rulebook, a neat ellipse or a gentle curve. But 3i Atlas, it twitched, subtle changes, almost rhythmic. Each adjustment so tiny it looked like a nudge, as if it was steering. A comet shouldn't do that. A rock can't choose direction. And yet, the data showed a pattern that almost mimicked awareness. Mathematical models were tested. Solar radiation pressure couldn't explain it. Outgassing, that usual culprit, was ruled out too, since the object's surface emitted no consistent vapor jets. What remained was something unsettling, micro-adjustments in momentum without visible cause. Almost like thrusters, but none that left heat or exhaust. Some speculated it used the sun's photons, a kind of ancient light sailing mechanism drifting by intelligence, not chance. A theory began to circulate quietly, that perhaps it was once designed to travel star to star, powered by nothing but light pressure and timeless intent, like a forgotten relic continuing a mission even after its makers had turned to dust. The thought was romantic, almost heartbreaking, and no one could disprove it. Somewhere in the still hum of observatories you could sense it, that quiet human wish that maybe something out there once built it, and it's simply continuing a journey. It began long before we existed. A traveler, without a home, still following instructions from a time before language. And as it glided closer to the sun, adjusting ever so slightly, even the most skeptical minds couldn't help but wonder, who or what was still guiding it through the dark? The first high-resolution imaging was supposed to settle debates. Instead, it started new ones. 3i Atlas wasn't shaped like a rock or even a comet. Its form was long, almost blade-like, with flat surfaces reflecting light unevenly. Gravity should have rounded it ages ago, but it resisted. The laws of time and erosion hadn't touched it. It looked more like something built than born. The ratios of its sides matched geometric precision, not perfect, but intentional enough to whisper of design. Computer renderings revealed that the shape could actually reduce drag in interstellar gas, meaning it could travel faster and survive longer than any natural object of similar size. Coincidence, maybe, but too elegant to ignore. Physicists ran density tests using reflected light analysis. The numbers suggested hollowness, an interior cavity of some kind. A rock that light surviving cosmic radiation for eons seemed impossible. Unless it wasn't rock, unless it was a shell, a frame for something once mechanical. One astronomer reportedly murmured, "It's aerodynamic in space." The words became a quiet joke in scientific circles. And yet, no one laughed too loudly, because deep down everyone felt it. Something about this object broke the rules, but beautifully so. Even the light that touched it behaved differently, bending, refracting, scattering like it brushed against polished surfaces. In those delicate curves of brightness, it almost felt like the universe was revealing a memory of hands that once built something meant to travel forever. When sunlight hit 3i Atlas for the first time, telescopes recorded something mesmerizing. Its reflection didn't spike randomly, it pulsed. The brightness rose and fell in soft intervals, repeating with perfect rhythm. Natural surfaces scatter light irregularly, but this pattern was musical structured, like a code of luminosity. Every astronomer who studied it felt the same quiet awe. It wasn't shining, it was speaking in light. Spectral analysis confirmed high reflectivity, 12 times brighter than expected for a comet of its composition. It was too polished, too deliberate. Some likened it to metal, others to crystalline alloys unknown in our periodic library. "It's like it wants to be seen," said one researcher softly, staring at the waveform readouts glowing green on her screen. The strangest moment came when they polarized the data. The reflection turned polarized too, responding in sync. That meant alignment, awareness, not intelligence maybe, but intention. It behaved like a mirror adjusting itself toward the observer, a conversation without words. NASA remained quiet. Officially, they called it an unusual albedo event. Unofficially, whispers spread that the light might carry data packets, bursts of encoded information lost across interstellar time, like Morse code for civilizations, too far apart to ever meet. If that's true, then maybe 3i Atlas isn't just reflecting our light. Maybe it's returning it, like an echo that's finally reached home after 1,000,000 years. When its faint tail finally began to form, astronomers leaned closer. Comet tails are simple. Ice sublimates, gas escapes, sunlight pushes it into a shimmering plume. But this tail wasn't normal. The particles glowed with a consistent orange hue, as if heated from within. And the emission didn't depend on solar intensity. It flickered independently, like something alive. Some scientists proposed chemical luminescence, reactions between exotic minerals and cosmic radiation, but others noticed an eerie resemblance to ion exhaust, like the faint, bluish trails produced by spacecraft propulsion systems. The spectral pattern even matched frequencies used in early ion thrusters on Earth. Coincidence? Maybe. But it made even the most skeptical pause. One analysis suggested that the glow carried a repeating oscillation, not chaotic like random outgassing, but stable, rhythmic. The signature reminded physicists of controlled plasma behavior, something engineered to maintain propulsion without fuel, using magnetic confinement instead. The kind of technology we dream about, but haven't achieved. And then came the strangest discovery. The glow responded faintly to solar flares, as if drawing energy from them, as if it had a way to feed on the storm itself. Suddenly, what seemed like ancient dust began to look more like a dormant engine reawakening after centuries in silence. Maybe it wasn't powered anymore. Maybe it was only remembering what it once was, a machine made to move through eternity, reigniting for a moment just to remind us that once someone else had already mastered the stars. It started as static, a soft, irregular hum buried deep in the noise floor of interplanetary space. Then technicians noticed something odd. The hum followed a cycle. Every 19 hours, a low-frequency pulse returned, faint but structured. Not loud enough to be a transmission, not random enough to be background radiation. It was in between, like breathing. Radio dishes across the world tuned in. The pattern persisted. When converted into sound waves, it produced a tone that felt eerily organic, like a heartbeat stretched across silence. Probably magnetic interference, one engineer said, but when they filtered known sources, the pulse remained, and then it shifted ever so slightly when 3I Atlas moved behind the sun. It was reacting. Could a natural object produce resonance like that? Maybe. But every time scientists dismissed it, the pulse returned, regular, patient, waiting. It wasn't calling to us. It was simply existing, emitting something gentle yet deliberate, like the quiet hum of a sleeping instrument remembering its song. Those who listened at night said it felt personal, as if space itself was whispering in rhythm with a memory too vast to comprehend. Maybe it's not a message to us at all. Maybe we're just overhearing a conversation meant for someone else. It was supposed to be a routine update. NASA's bulletin on 3I Atlas was expected by midweek. Small data, minor findings, nothing more, but the release never came. Then quietly the official page went offline. No press statement, no tweet, just silence. In the world of space research, that silence meant one thing. Something unexpected had been found. Engineers whispered about a data freeze. Observatories were told to forward their raw images for cross-analysis, but no one received responses afterward. A few independent scientists noticed that certain radio frequencies monitoring the object were suddenly encrypted, frequencies that had been public for years. Something about the signals, or maybe the images, was too sensitive for public release. Rumors surfaced that NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab had captured something strange. An image showing an angular shadow beside the object, like a smaller body traveling in formation. The photo was never confirmed, but the whisper spread fast. Maybe it's nothing, some said, or maybe it's not alone. The idea lingered in scientific circles like static in the background of a radio call. When the agency finally broke the silence, it was through a vague statement. Data under verification. No denial. No explanation. And that was enough to ignite imaginations worldwide. Because sometimes what's left unsaid speaks louder than truth itself. The James Webb Space Telescope was built to look back in time, to study galaxies being born. But one night it turned its gold mirrors towards something much closer, 3I Atlas. The images it returned were so detailed they shocked even the mission team. Under infrared light, the object's surface glowed unevenly, like patches of warmth spreading across a machine that had been asleep too long. Its heat map showed specific areas heating and cooling in sequence, not randomly. Natural rocks don't do that. It was as if some internal mechanism was pulsing, waking, cooling, then resting again. And beneath those pulses, Webb detected faint electromagnetic activity, not from the sun, not from cosmic rays, but from within the object itself. The light curves, when processed, revealed a lattice, a pattern repeating every 9.8 seconds. Some called it noise. Others called it a pulse. A rhythm too orderly to ignore. One astrophysicist compared it to the power signature of a dying battery, flickering in memory of what it once powered. The images weren't released to the public. Only the infrared stills, blurry and unremarkable, made it out. But those who saw the real data described it with one word: alive. And if something millions of years old still pulses with heat in the darkness, what story could it possibly be holding inside? When astronomers measured its rotation, they expected chaos, uneven tumbling like most comets. Instead, they found grace, a slow, precise spin at 0.37 revolutions per hour, perfectly stable, no wobble, no drift, like a gyroscope designed by intention. That stability bothered scientists. Over eons of travel, impacts and solar winds should have unbalanced it, yet 3i Atlas turned like a well-balanced wheel. Some compared it to the smooth spin of Earth's satellites. Others said it was the cosmic equivalent of a dancer still remembering the rhythm long after the music ends. What truly puzzled everyone was how the spin adjusted itself subtly when exposed to solar wind. Normally, radiation pressure would accelerate or decelerate an object unevenly, but 3i Atlas countered it, almost predicting the push. That meant feedback, some form of internal balance mechanism, something that sensed force and responded. Models tried to explain it as mass asymmetry, but simulations failed. Even artificial inertia matching didn't align with data. Eventually, one paper quietly suggested the term reactive self-stabilization, a phrase that felt more like description than understanding. Some say it's just luck, an object frozen in perfect balance, but others sense something deeper. Like an ancient motion preserved by design, a message left not in words but in movement. As 3i Atlas drifted past Mars' orbit, instruments began to record faint warmth. Impossible warmth. The sunlight reaching it was too weak to heat it that much, yet its thermal readings spiked in bursts, like pockets of internal fire flickering within an icy shell. The fluctuations were subtle but consistent, rising and falling in patterns too even to be random. Infrared scanners from multiple observatories confirmed it. The object's core was warmer than its crust by nearly 60 degrees Kelvin. That shouldn't happen unless there was energy stored inside. But how could something supposedly natural retain energy for millions of years of interstellar travel? One theory suggested radioactive decay. Another proposed trapped chemical reactions deep within metallic seams. But the pattern was too neat, too rhythmic, like a slow heartbeat deep inside stone. And then came the oddest finding. Every time solar flares erupted on the sun, the warmth within 3i Atlas flared too, seconds later. A response time too quick for thermal conduction. It was reacting instantly, almost intelligently. Could it be absorbing energy? Could it be designed to awaken in sunlight? That question lingered among those who dared to look closer, because if so, then 3i Atlas wasn't just passing through, it was recharging. And that thought alone kept astronomers awake under quiet skies, staring at screens glowing with secrets too vast to name. Objects falling toward the sun always accelerate. That's basic physics. But 3i Atlas didn't. As it approached the sun's gravity well, its speed began to decrease. Instruments confirmed it, a measurable deceleration. No visible jets, no fragments breaking off, no drag force strong enough to cause it. It was as if something inside was fighting gravity itself. At first, scientists blamed solar wind resistance until they realized the deceleration didn't align with solar patterns. The slowing was deliberate, smooth, like controlled braking. And that word, controlled, was one even the most rational minds hesitated to speak. One deep space probe recorded a magnetic anomaly trailing behind it, a faint distortion that pulsed in sync with its slowing motion. The field resembled an active electromagnetic bubble, something a spacecraft might generate to stabilize against solar gravity, but there were no engines, no exhaust, just invisible control. When plotted visually, the object's path curved with elegance, like a ship approaching harbor rather than falling helplessly into flame. The physics said one thing, the behavior said another. And between those two truths lay a mystery no one could explain. Perhaps 3i Atlas isn't slowing down at all. Perhaps it's arriving exactly where it always meant to be. When 3i Atlas passed beyond Earth's orbit, something peculiar happened behind it. Radio telescopes tuned to its trajectory began picking up a faint, repeating echo, not from the object itself, but from the space it left behind. It was as if the vacuum was ringing, holding on to a memory of its passage. Normally, once a comet moves on, the region goes silent, but this time it didn't. The echo pulsed, soft, hollow, rhythmic. The pulse wasn't sound, of course, it was electromagnetic, and it came in exact intervals that mirrored the 19-hour cycle discovered earlier. The pattern persisted for days even after the object had moved millions of miles away. Some called it a data residue, a gravitational fingerprint. Others described it poetically, as if space itself was humming the object's tune long after it had gone. NASA's Deep Space Network confirmed the anomaly but never explained it. Private observatories reported similar ripples. The energy signature faded only after 3 full rotations, as if the universe itself needed time to exhale. Could it have been an intentional residue, a trail meant to be followed? If space can remember something passing through it, perhaps 3i Atlas wanted to be remembered too. When light curves were analyzed, they revealed something startling. Fluctuations that hinted at internal cavities. A solid body reflects light evenly, but 3i Atlas shimmered like a bell, hollow, resonant, echoing. The patterns suggested empty space beneath a thin crust, not fractured like a rock but chambered, deliberate. The density readings were impossibly low for its size, as though it was built around emptiness. At first, researchers theorized trapped gas pockets, but the structure held far too stable under rotation and solar stress. That left a stranger idea, an internal frame, maybe metallic, designed to maintain integrity during interstellar travel, like the skeleton of a craft stripped of its skin by time. When the European Southern Observatory pointed high-resolution arrays toward it, radar waves returned irregular echoes, the kind you'd expect from an object with corridors or layers. Nothing conclusive, but enough to unsettle. One researcher described it as listening to a whisper inside a hollow cathedral. If it truly was hollow, what rested inside? An empty chamber, a core long dead, or something still waiting in the quiet darkness, preserving a story we're not ready to understand yet. Every comet has a rhythm, brightness, tail shape, spin. But 3i Atlas had patterns that broke every rule. Its light signature oscillated like a heartbeat, but not randomly. It pulsed in prime number intervals, 2, 3, 5, 7, then repeated. Prime sequences don't occur naturally in cosmic events. They belong to mathematics, the universal language. It was as though the object was counting or speaking. Astrophysicists double-checked, searching for measurement errors. None were found. The same rhythmic pulse appeared in different wavelengths, from visible light to radio bands. The intervals stayed exact. "It's like a beacon," one astronomer whispered, staring at the synchronized graphs. "Like it's trying to be recognized." No one dared to publish that thought officially. But in private networks, the data circulated under nicknames: the prime signal, the silent code, the Atlas sequence. Each carried the same implication: intelligence, or something that once carried it. And yet, 3i Atlas made no noise, no message, only math written in light. Maybe it wasn't calling anyone. Maybe it was remembering how to call, like a clock still ticking after the house has fallen to dust. Its path across the solar system looked effortless, an elegant curve traced through invisible geometry. When mapped, its trajectory formed a nearly perfect golden spiral, the same ratio found in seashells, galaxies, and the growth of living forms. Coincidence, perhaps? But that spiral wasn't imposed by gravity. It emerged naturally from its motion. That's what stunned the scientists. Computer models confirmed it. The orbital path aligned within fractions of the Fibonacci constant. It shouldn't have, Random space rocks don't trace mathematical art, but this one did, moving like it knew beauty mattered. "It's physics poetry," one astronomer said softly, unable to explain the precision. "The golden spiral is often found in nature, yes, but never in motion through space. It's a design that minimizes resistance and maximizes harmony. In a sense, it's how something would move if it were designed to last forever." Maybe 3i Atlas isn't obeying physics. Maybe it's following a code of elegance, the same one that shapes galaxies, DNA, and waves of the sea. As if whatever sent it out there understood not just science, but art. And then came the signal. Faint, consistent, unwavering. Every 19 hours, radio telescopes picked up a pulse near 1420 megahertz, the hydrogen line, the natural frequency of the universe itself. The same frequency SETI listens to for extraterrestrial contact. Coincidence? Maybe. But the timing matched 3i Atlas's rotation exactly. The pulse wasn't strong, it was barely above cosmic background noise, but when data was stacked over days, a repeating pattern emerged, not a voice, not a transmission, but a structured whisper. 3 bursts, pause, 2 bursts, pause. Then silence. The sequence repeated endlessly, precise as the ticking of a celestial clock. Engineers tried filtering for interference, but it persisted, unaffected by location or instrument. The more they studied it, the more it felt deliberate. Not random noise, but intention, frozen into frequency. Even the old Arecibo recordings from decades ago showed faint traces of the same rhythm, as if this wasn't the first time it had passed nearby. If 3i Atlas truly carries a signal, it's not one meant to start a conversation. It's one meant to remind the cosmos that something, or someone, once spoke here, and the echo never died. By now, the scientific community was split into 2 worlds. One side clung tightly to the idea of natural explanation, outgassing, random alignments, exotic ice. The other side whispered about intention, a relic, a probe, a messenger. Neither side could fully disprove the other. And in that tension, something human emerged, wonder and doubt living side by side. Papers appeared online, full of complex math and careful words. But in late-night conferences over coffee and dim screens, even the skeptics admitted it doesn't behave like anything we've seen. That sentence hung in the air like frost. People who'd built their lives on rationality were quietly staring at their own limits. A few older astronomers spoke of cosmic archaeology, the idea that we're not finding aliens but their ruins. Perhaps 3i Atlas was never meant to be alive. Perhaps it's debris from a civilization long gone, wandering like a bottle lost at sea. That notion felt safer, yet sadder. And yet, for every elegant equation posted, for every cautious quote given to the press, there were those who simply sat in observatories, looking at the faint dot on the screen and feeling, deeply, that they were looking at history reaching out a hand. Something older than our words, something older than our fear. Theories divide, but the sky remains whole. And 3i Atlas continued to glide silently, indifferent to our debates. When the first interstellar object, Oumuamua, passed in 2017, it sparked whispers of technology, its strange acceleration, its cigar-like shape, all quietly filed away as unexplained. Yet those equations sat waiting, forgotten, in archived papers. Now with 3i Atlas, those same anomalies reappeared, but stronger, clearer, undeniable. Old research teams reopened their models. They overlaid the 2 trajectories. Patterns emerged, echoes across time, the same slight deviations from gravitational expectation, the same subtle light curve pulses, even the same rotational stability. Was it coincidence, or was 3i Atlas following Oumuamua's path like a trail? One theory began to circulate privately. But these objects weren't random at all, but part of a sequence, like breadcrumbs across the galaxy, each carrying a fragment of a larger design. The equations began to align like puzzle pieces. If so, then 3i Atlas wasn't just a visitor. It was chapter 2 of a story we missed the first time. A message continuing its journey, waiting for someone to notice the pattern. And perhaps by finally comparing the old with the new, we were beginning to hear it. The forgotten equations of Oumuamua were no longer just math. They were a whisper from 2017, now louder, asking if we were ready to listen this time. From the moment it appeared, people felt déjà vu. It wasn't just another rock. It had the same narrative beat as Oumuamua, but amplified. Brighter reflections, stronger pulses, cleaner arcs, like a second verse to a song we half remember. And that made some wonder, if it's a sequel, who's writing the story? The similarities were eerie. Both objects came from outside our system. Both defied expected acceleration. Both left scientists scrambling for explanations. But 3i Atlas added something new. The whispers, the prime sequences, the glow responding to solar storms. It was as if whoever or whatever sent these objects had upgraded the signal, making it harder to dismiss. The public noticed, too, forums filled with side-by-side comparisons. Amateur astronomers tracked both paths, overlaying them like a map of an invisible highway through space. The paths crossed near the same stellar coordinates far beyond Pluto. Not proof, but a hint, a thread connecting two mysteries. If this is indeed a sequel, what's the story arc? Is it building towards something? Are we only seeing fragments of a larger design that spans centuries? The thought sat quietly at the back of every conversation, not scary, but thrilling, like finding a second ancient scroll that matches the first and realizing a third might exist somewhere out there. The word probe is loaded, but it hung in the air nonetheless. Not a craft bristling with antennas and engines like in our science fiction, but something older, simpler, a seed, adrift, a package wrapped in silence, something built not for speed but for endurance. A messenger meant to last longer than its makers. Carl Sagan once said that if civilizations survive long enough, they'll send out artifacts, slow, steady, nearly invisible, carrying knowledge across the gulfs of time. 3i Atlas fit that vision too neatly to ignore. It didn't behave like a comet, but it also didn't behave like a ship. It behaved like a time capsule, obeying a program no one could still hear. Speculation grew. Maybe it isn't functioning anymore. Maybe it's only drifting, its message worn down by eons. Or maybe it's waiting for something, a signal, a star, a condition to awaken. Something that hasn't happened yet. In quiet labs, scientists imagined opening it, the smell of alien dust, the touch of metals older than Earth, the possibility of learning not just what's out there, but what came before us. An ancient probe isn't just a machine, it's a memory. And 3i Atlas might be the oldest memory we've ever encountered, whispering across a distance we can barely imagine. Then came the photographs that changed everything. Night after night, amateur astronomers compared their images of 3i Atlas and saw something uncanny. Its color shifted. One night it gleamed bluish-white. The next, pale gold, then green. These weren't atmospheric distortions. The shifts appeared in data worldwide in sync, like a heartbeat of hue. Spectrographs showed the colors weren't random, each hue aligned with specific energy states, as if the surface was actively tuning itself. Some compared it to the aurora borealis, others to the way cuttlefish change skin patterns. But no natural comet tail had ever shown such deliberate variation. When plotted over time, the colors formed a cycle, a slow, repeating loop every 7.3 days, a pattern that didn't match rotation or solar winds. Something internal was orchestrating it, like a lighthouse rotating not in spin, but in wavelength. The strangest part? The pattern resembled the sequence of elements in an ancient star catalogue: hydrogen, helium, carbon, like a list of cosmic ingredients painted in light. Coincidence, maybe, but once seen, it was hard to unsee. Colours are language in nature: bees, birds, corals. Maybe 3i Atlas was speaking too in the only language it had left: light itself. When scientists began studying the faint trail of dust behind 3i Atlas, they expected random debris: frozen water, carbon grains, iron fragments, ordinary things. But when they mapped the distribution of those particles, something astonishing appeared. The particles weren't random at all. They formed clusters and voids at repeating intervals, like binary code written in matter. The spacing between particles followed a ratio that matched computer data structures: bits, bytes, then silence, patterns of ones and zeros written not in light or sound but in dust. When researchers ran a Fourier transform on the data, they found harmonic peaks, the kind you'd expect from an intentional signal, a message, written in physical space. At first, many dismissed it as coincidence, natural resonance caused by magnetic fields. But the repetition continued across different instruments, in different countries, at different times, as if the debris itself remembered its formation, as though something long ago had programmed the way it would fall apart. And that's what left everyone quiet. Because if dust can carry order, if randomness hides design, then maybe every particle in the universe is a letter in a sentence we're only beginning to read. Then something strange happened back on Earth. For 1 week in April, global magnetometers recorded tiny fluctuations, subtle, rhythmic, gentle. The pattern matched the same 19-hour pulse coming from 3i Atlas, but this time it wasn't in space, it was here, woven into our ionosphere. Night skies shimmered faintly with silent ripples invisible to the naked eye but seen clearly in sensors. A pulse of energy that bent radio waves and danced through power grids. No danger, just a hum, like space breathing close to us. Some called it coincidence, but the alignment was too perfect. The moment 3i Atlas passed closest to Earth, our skies responded. Auroras brightened in places they shouldn't, equatorial regions that never see them. The atmosphere itself seemed to whisper in color. Was it resonance? A reaction between our magnetic field and the object's energy? Or was it something more poetic, two cosmic instruments tuning to the same note for the first time? Those who were awake in the quiet hours of that week remember the feeling, the sense that something enormous had brushed against us gently before gliding away again into the dark. When AI algorithms were finally used to analyze 3i Atlas's full path, the results were eerie. Its trajectory, when plotted in 3 dimensions, formed a shape, not random, not orbital, but geometric. From above, the curve traced a spiral, from the side, a wave. Combined together, the path resembled a glyph, a symbol suspended in space. Researchers overlaid the data on star maps. The spiral passed near constellations that in ancient cultures represented knowledge and creation: Lyra, Cygnus, Aquila. The alignment was statistically improbable, almost deliberate, as if the path itself was writing something across our solar system, not a message in words, but in motion. One AI model tried to interpret it as encoded information. It converted trajectory data into binary, then sound. The output wasn't static, it was music, haunting, harmonic, steady, a melody written in orbit, audible only through data. Whether coincidence or intention, that sound became a quiet obsession, because maybe it wasn't meant for us. Maybe it's just a passing signature, a cosmic fingerprint left behind by a civilization long gone, but still remembered through the way their machines moved. And that thought, that motion itself could carry meaning, changed how scientists looked at the sky forever. As data poured in from satellites, telescopes, and radio stations, scientists decided to let artificial intelligence take a turn. They fed every known measurement of 3i Atlas: brightness, spin, trajectory, echo, signal, dust, into a deep learning model trained on pattern recognition. The AI didn't hesitate. Within hours, it flagged something hidden beneath the chaos: repetition. It found that every type of data, optical, thermal, electromagnetic, pulsed with the same ratio of intervals: 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 9, pi, the universal constant. The object was somehow emitting nature's most famous number across all frequencies, all behaviors, all scales. To a human, it meant mystery. To AI, it meant design. Random chance can mimic order, but never with mathematical elegance this precise. It was as if the entire being of 3i Atlas, its shape, movement, temperature, and signal, were orchestrated to repeat a single phrase across reality: the pattern of existence itself. The scientists didn't publish the result immediately, because if that pattern truly was intentional, it didn't just prove design, it proved awareness. And that idea, quiet as it was, unsettled the world more deeply than any headline ever could. When the sun flared that week, bright arcs bursting from its surface, 3i Atlas responded. Instruments showed the object glowing brighter with every solar eruption, then dimming as the flare subsided. It was synchronized, like a dance between star and visitor. The pattern held firm, solar energy peaked, and minutes later the interstellar traveler shimmered, too fast for heating, too deliberate for reflection. Some theorized magnetic coupling, that 3i Atlas had conductive properties allowing it to listen to the sun's magnetic symphony. Others called it parasitic, absorbing energy like a seed feeding from light. But what startled everyone was timing. The sun's largest flare occurred exactly as 3i Atlas reached perihelion, its closest approach. The odds of that coincidence were astronomical. It was as though the object knew when to draw near, arriving to feed at the brightest moment. In myths, comets were messengers of the gods, bringing warnings or blessings in fire. And as the flare painted the solar corona gold, 3i Atlas pulsed once more, brighter than ever, like a nod of recognition. It didn't burn, it didn't fade, it simply glowed, as if the sun and the stranger had known each other long before we ever began watching. By now, the patterns were too precise to ignore. The timing of solar flares, the magnetic echoes, the repeating mathematical ratios, all of it looked orchestrated. But science hesitates with the word design, so they called it coincidence instead. Yet, deep down, even the most logical minds began to feel a quiet doubt. How many coincidences does it take before you start calling it intention? Philosophers joined the debate. If the universe itself is built on mathematics, then maybe design isn't artificial. Maybe it's nature expressing itself with purpose. Maybe 3i Atlas wasn't built by hands, but by laws, shaped perfectly by the same cosmic mind that shaped us. The boundary between creation and coincidence blurred, and that idea comforted some, frightened others. Because if design hides inside randomness, then maybe nothing is truly random at all. Maybe everything, every orbit, every flicker of light, is a brushstroke on a vast canvas we can't yet see. The mystery of 3i Atlas became more than a question of alien or natural. It became a mirror for how humans see meaning. The fragile line between chaos and pattern, between seeing what is there and seeing what we hope is there. The James Webb telescope, still focused on 3i Atlas, detected something breathtaking, sudden spikes of infrared energy. Not flares, not outgassing, bursts, each lasting less than 3 seconds, each consistent in shape, each emerging at exact intervals. The bursts weren't bright enough to see with the naked eye, but strong enough to disturb instruments designed for galaxies millions of light-years away. The frequency of the bursts followed the same prime number pattern observed earlier. It was as if the object was breathing energy into the void, quietly, rhythmically. When scientists slowed down the infrared recordings and turned them into sound waves, it produced a low hum, almost musical. The harmonics were hauntingly familiar, identical to resonances found in ancient planetary chants recorded by early civilizations who watched the skies millennia ago. Coincidence, again, or continuity? Some said it was a feedback loop, the object's surface interacting with solar plasma. Others believed it was something deeper, a slow awakening, the relic of a system not yet dead. Because even in silence, 3i Atlas kept giving off the one thing that defies time, rhythm. And rhythm in any form always suggests life. At NASA's data center, 3i Atlas had its own folder, locked, color-coded, accessible only to a few. Inside were thousands of files from telescopes worldwide, brightness curves, radio frequencies, plasma responses. Each data set led to more questions than answers, but one stood out, a signature repeating across all instruments, no matter where they were on Earth. It was subtle, an overlap of frequencies forming a harmonic ladder. Every instrument picked up the same pattern, like an invisible wave moving through them. No known natural phenomenon behaves this way. Theories failed, equations contradicted. One astrophysicist wrote in a private memo, "It's like our instruments are playing a note we didn't intend to." That sentence spread through scientific circles quietly, because it hinted at something profound, the possibility that 3i Atlas wasn't sending a signal to us, but through us. Maybe it was using our technology as part of its design, turning every sensor into an unknowing participant in a larger experiment. When asked publicly, NASA's spokesperson smiled gently and said, "We can't explain it yet." And somehow that "yet" sounded less like humility and more like patience. Then came the hypothesis that changed everything. A group of astrophysicists noticed that 3i Atlas's trajectory wasn't random. It was aligning with major gravitational nodes. Each time it passed near a planet, it adjusted slightly as if taking a reading. Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter. Every flyby seemed intentional. It wasn't collecting mass or light. It was collecting geometry, the invisible architecture of our solar system. Like a cartographer of gravity itself, its path through space formed what looked like a network, a web connecting planetary orbits in ways we hadn't mapped before. The possibility arose that it was gathering a gravitational fingerprint, a way to catalogue star systems across the galaxy based on their unique distortions in space-time, not to communicate, but to remember. Maybe 3i Atlas wasn't here to talk, maybe it was here to map, quietly logging the structure of our home before drifting onward. The thought was both thrilling and humbling, because if it was mapping us, then somewhere, out there, someone might already have our solar system drawn on a star chart, neatly labeled, softly glowing, in a collection of many others like it. Long before telescopes, ancient cultures told stories of visitors from the star, objects that crossed the heavens carrying omens or wisdom. The Mayans spoke of sky seeds, the Egyptians carved symbols of shining boats. In Vedic texts, there were stories of vimanas, vessels that moved between worlds guided by sound and light. All myths, of course, until now. When 3i Atlas appeared, historians began noticing eerie parallels. Old records described a light that shimmered like metal, moved like thought, and left the sky trembling. Descriptions too precise to ignore. It was as if ancient humans had seen something just like this before and immortalized it in myth. Could 3i Atlas be part of that same lineage, returning on a cycle so vast we only now meet it again? If civilizations rise and fall like tides, then maybe the myths weren't imagination. Maybe they were memory. The way a dream repeats across generations, softened by time, but never lost. To think that our ancestors once looked up and saw what we now study with satellites connects us to them in ways beyond science. It reminds us that awe itself might be the oldest form of communication between humans and the stars. Long before telescopes, people were already looking up and wondering. Across continents, stories appeared about luminous objects arriving silently from the heavens. The Dogon tribe spoke of a star canoe that drifted through the night without fire. Chinese texts described dragons of metal gliding soundlessly across the sky. The Greeks told of wandering stars that left messages for those who could read the sky. When 3i Atlas was first photographed, historians began overlaying these myths onto the modern image. The similarities felt uncanny, not just in description, but in timing. Some ancient calendars even marked a third visitor, predicted to appear after a great turning of ages. Could they have been tracking a cycle we lost? Perhaps these stories weren't mere poetry. Perhaps they were memories, encoded in myth. A way for ancestors to whisper across millennia, "This has happened before." It's easy to dismiss such parallels as coincidence, but when data and myth begin to echo each other, you feel the pull of something older than evidence, a hum in the bones. And as we stare at 3i Atlas on our screens, it's humbling to think someone thousands of years ago might have stared at the same kind of visitor and felt the same quiet awe. A curious pattern emerged among ancient star maps. They didn't just chart planets and constellations. Some included markings for wanderers that weren't regular comets or known stars. Egyptian priests called them third lights. Mayan astronomers named them silent messengers. In Hindu texts, there's reference to Tritiya Agni, the third fire crossing the heavens after two others. When scholars lined up those prophecies with our timeline, an eerie picture formed. The first could be interpreted as Oumuamua, the second as Borisov, and now the third, 3i Atlas. A sequence of arrivals across epochs. The details matched loosely, but enough to stir curiosity. Were these just poetic coincidences, or did ancient skywatchers actually record a cycle of interstellar visitors? If so, then 3i Atlas isn't a surprise at all. It's a return, a guest on a timetable older than recorded history. Thinking of this makes the mystery feel larger, not smaller, because if ancient people knew, who told them? Or were they simply better listeners to the sky than we are now? Sometimes looking back helps us see forward. When scientists overlaid 3i Atlas's trajectory onto the orbits of the inner planets, a strange symmetry appeared. At 3 key points, the object crossed the plane of Earth's orbit almost exactly at our position, like a needle threading through a moving target. The odds of that alignment happening randomly were tiny. Yet it happened, and not just once. More startling, the crossings matched important astronomical dates, equinoxes, solar maxima, points our ancestors celebrated as sacred. Some theorists suggested gravitational resonance, but the math didn't hold. It was as if the object was timing its approach to Earth's heartbeat, our spin, our seasons, our cycles. If it truly is a mapmaker, maybe it needed these alignments for calibration, like a photographer aligning a lens before taking a cosmic portrait. Or Maybe it's not measuring at all. Maybe it's meeting us, brushing past our orbit like a ship passing a harbour it knows well. That thought changes the story. We're not just watching something fly by. We're in its path. We've been included in its design, even if we don't yet understand why. On a still night in the Atacama Desert, an array of cameras pointed at 3i Atlas caught something extraordinary. A flash, brighter than a star, sharper than a flare, lasting less than a heartbeat. At first, it looked like an instrument glitch, but 3 observatories in 3 countries recorded it at the same instant. When slowed down, the flash revealed a structure. Concentric rings expanding outward, like ripples on a pond. Not a gas jet, not a collision. It was energy, pure and contained, expanding in a perfect circle, then vanishing. The wavelength was unusual too, centered on frequencies used for high-efficiency data transfer in space communications. Some said it was a reflection, sunlight off a rotating facet. Others thought it was a deliberate ping, a cosmic flashbulb, testing its own sensors or marking a point in its journey. Whatever it was, it didn't happen again. The flash became a single, perfect anomaly, a signature event. Sometimes the smallest moments carry the loudest meaning. That 1 second flash may have been nothing, or it may have been the interstellar equivalent of a wave hello. Then came the photo that changed the tone completely. An amateur astronomer in Arizona captured a long exposure image of 3i Atlas using a custom infrared filter. What appeared on his screen wasn't just the object, but something faint trailing behind it. A second, smaller point of light, moving in perfect sync. He posted the image online. Within hours, it vanished, flagged for data verification. But screenshots survived. People compared the positions, measured the angles. It wasn't a star, wasn't a glitch. It was moving with 3i Atlas like a companion. Speculation exploded. Was it debris, a second object, a probe escorting a probe? No official comment ever came. But in private, some scientists admitted they had seen the same signature on professional instruments. A faint twin shadow traveling just out of focus. If true, then 3i Atlas isn't alone. And if it isn't alone, then maybe it's not just a messenger. Maybe it's a convoy, a pair of relics tracing an ancient route through our sky, whispering a story we're only beginning to hear. By now, a new and almost unthinkable theory surfaced among astronomers. What if 3i Atlas isn't just an object? What if it's alive? Not alive like an animal, but alive like a single-cell organism the size of a mountain, a cosmic plankton drifting between stars, gathering energy and leaving trails. The idea sounds wild, yet the data, rhythmic pulses, heat fluctuations, color changes, all resembled biological cycles more than mechanical ones. Some compared it to tardigrades, microscopic creatures on Earth that can survive in vacuum, radiation, and freezing cold. Scaled up beyond imagination, could something like that exist in space? A living comet feeding on solar wind and storing energy for eons? It might not be conscious the way we are, but it could be responding, sensing, adapting. Others rejected the idea outright. Life needs liquid, complex chemistry, structure. But deep down, the thought was hard to ignore. Because if the universe can form stars and galaxies, why not a slow, wandering organism built from minerals and plasma instead of cells and blood? To even imagine it changes how you see the night sky. Maybe we're not looking at cold rocks and burning suns. Maybe we're looking at a living ocean full of beings we've mistaken for debris. As researchers studied the object's electromagnetic emissions, a pattern emerged that defied simple explanation. It wasn't just static. It wasn't random noise. It pulsed in sequences, changed amplitude like a heartbeat, and shifted slightly depending on the object's orientation. These weren't the traits of passive magnetism. They resembled active modulation. One hypothesis was that 3I Atlas had a ferromagnetic core interacting with solar wind, producing natural pulses. But the intervals of those pulses formed mathematical progressions, simple, elegant ratios that nature rarely creates by accident. The pulses also responded faintly to our own transmissions, changing slightly after radio waves were sent in its direction. It might be coincidence, it might be a natural feedback loop, or it might be something extraordinary, a conscious signal without language, a magnetic song designed to last across distances where speech dies. Some scientists began calling it the hum, others called it the heartbeat, and perhaps that's the simplest way to understand it, not as a message but as presence, a faint steady rhythm echoing across emptiness, reminding us that even silence can be alive. This is the strangest part. Several astronomers involved in the early observations reported vivid, unusual dreams about the object, not nightmares, but scenes of light, spiral paths, and unfamiliar skies. One scientist described seeing a city of stars and a slow-moving shape gliding through it before she had ever seen an image of 3I Atlas. Another dreamed of a pulsing pattern in dust that later appeared in real data. They laughed about it privately, calling it cosmic imagination. Yet the coincidence unsettled them. Could it be simple suggestion? Stress? Or was the object somehow resonating with their subconscious, like a tuning fork making another vibrate from across a room? Throughout history, skywatchers have claimed visions. Prophets, astronomers, mystics. We separate science and dreams, but maybe both come from the same source, attention so deep it crosses into intuition. Whether real or imagined, the dreams added a human layer to the story. Behind every graph and telescope was a person, sitting alone at night, feeling something vast, leaning closer to their mind. And that's part of the mystery too, not just what 3I Atlas is wonky, but what it does to us when we try to see it. Hidden in NASA's archives lay an overlooked clue. Back in 1989, the Voyager 2 probe recorded an unexplained spike in its plasma wave instrument, a faint pulse in deep space at 19-hour intervals. No one paid much attention. It was labeled instrumental anomaly and filed away. When scientists re-examined old Voyager data after 3I Atlas appeared, the pulse matched exactly. The same frequency, the same rhythm, the same whisper. Decades earlier, far from our sun, had Voyager brushed against the edge of 3I Atlas's path before we even knew it existed? If so, then this object's journey isn't new. It's been moving on a route older than our instruments, older than our awareness. The realization changed everything. It meant 3I Atlas had been in our cosmic neighborhood before. It might be retracing its steps, following a memory older than our civilization. Voyager had unknowingly heard a hello long before we had eyes to see the one sending it. Sometimes history isn't about what's new. It's about finally recognizing what's been quietly happening all along. After the Arizona photo leaked, more amateurs began watching the sky. One night, an observer in Spain caught something faintly trailing behind 3I Atlas again. The signal was weak, but its path mirrored the larger objects perfectly. When plotted across several nights, the 2 points formed a stable formation, one leading, one following. If true, then 3I Atlas has a companion. Not debris, a deliberate pairing. Like 2 pieces of a mechanism, or a parent and child. The smaller body's light signature flickered differently. Cooler, dimmer, but steady. Could this be a power source, a data vault, or simply another piece of the same message? No one knew. But the idea of a convoy, 2 travelers moving through the dark together, struck a chord. It felt less like machinery and more like story. Companionship across eons, 2 silent witnesses crossing star systems hand in hand. Even in the coldest reaches of space, The thought of two objects journeying together makes the mystery feel strangely human, because whatever they are not alone, and neither are we looking up, wondering about them now.